Hi there, it's Michael. Today we're interviewing a gentleman named Christopher Slee. Chris is the founder, principal, and chief product officer at a software engineering company in Ohio. He's got well over 30 years of experience in developing really innovative digital products. He's blazing forward, even though he's been going for 3 decades. He's always learning and always trying out new things. One of his latest ventures is something called Include Health, which leverages machine learning, some proprietary algorithms, and web camera technology to support a blend of musculoskeletal services. He's just a wealth of information, and we talked to him about culture and how the pandemic has changed how he does business, as well as talking about motion capture and whiskey. Please join me and David in welcoming to the podcast, to Nerds Out of Water, Christopher Slee. Welcome to Nerds Out of Water. This is Michael, and we're here with David and Chris Slee, who's joining us from Ohio. How are you today, Chris?
Makes it sound so foreign to me, but no, it's just Ohio. I'm doing great. Yeah,
great. Just Ohio, same as it's just Canberra.
Yeah. Right.
And you're in the warmth, and we're in the cold.
Yes, yes. Windows are open. The trees are turning green. Flowers are coming out. Ready for nice summer. So
brilliant.
There we go.
Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and your journey to where you got to today?
Sure. I started in technology sort of an odd way. I was 8, so a little young. And this was back before, back in the days when you had to like read books and like if you were going to learn how to write code, you had to read that. But my father was into ham radio, and that used to be a really big thing back in the dark ages. And we would go to this place called Radio Shack, which was sort of where you got all of your electronics equipment and those kind of things. And I was in there with him one day, and he was talking to the guy behind the counter, and there was this like silver box sitting, it was a TV and it had a keyboard on it, and like I'd never seen one of these before. It was like brand new. Then I walked up to it and I touched the keyboard, and it said syntax error. And I was like, what's a syntax error? And it said syntax error. And I was like, giraffe. I remember typing giraffe, and it was like syntax error. And the guy came around the corner of the bar, and he's like, here. And I remember him clear as day. He wrote, circle, parens, and some numbers, and then hit enter. And this red circle showed up in the middle of the screen. And it was just one of those moments that I went, wow, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm done. Like, I know what's going on. And I convinced my parents to get me a VIC-20, which was, one of the Commodores back in the day. And I taught myself assembly language, and we've just been doing it ever since. So
yeah, the VIC-20 had 5K RAM. I had one of those. I added another 3K as a cartridge, so I could actually play a little bit more. But I remember overriding.
Upgrading
the font set to have like general animation and things like that as well.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, Chris. I actually bought my first ham radio from Radio Shack, but in the UK.
Really? That's awesome. Yeah, my dad was into that, and it was just one of those, he would sit and he would talk to people in, foreign countries, and it was, and he was really the one that got me into science of understanding, we're actually, we are bouncing signals off of, cloud cover in the stratosphere back down somewhere else on Earth, and it was just like mind blowing. It was like, all right, I'm into technology. Let's do this.
Yeah, yeah. I remember those days.
Nice.
So fun. What happened?
I know. Well, it just had this immense sense of exploration. Like almost anything can happen. You can build anything you want. I remember, mowing the grass in my parents' house, up and back and be thinking about video games I wanted to write. And then, I remember on like a Commodore 64, learning how to do sprites and joystick controls and, all those kind of things. And you learned that through books. There was no Google. Yep. There was no, like, hey, how do you run a joystick? And there's the answer. I'm going to copy this code and paste it. It's like, no, you had to learn that. stuff.
Yeah, and I remember my first arc that I ever drew, and I was so proud of that arc. So talk to me about Include Health. You've been working with Include Health. Talk to me about that. Where does that take in you, and how did you get into that?
Yeah, so I got involved with Include Health about 6 years ago, and it had started as an organization that our CEO, he was doing his design thesis coming out of university, and he had watched a guy in a wheelchair go up to sort of a piece of physical equipment, like a piece of gym equipment, and struggle and have a lot of attachments and things he was trying to use to work out. And so he made his design thesis a piece of an accessible functional trainer. So someone who was in a wheelchair or maybe missing limbs or digits could go up and continue to work out, and it would set the weight stack for you, and it was neutrally buoyant, so it would be able to move its arms around without, someone, you didn't have to like grasp things. And he won a bunch of awards. In fact, he won the Dyson Award.
Oh, okay.
And as that functional trainer became more real over a period of time, I got involved when we had the physical device. So it's a 900-pound functional trainer. And we wanted to cloud enable it. So there was some firmware and then, cloud connected systems and web applications that allowed a clinician to prescribe workouts for someone who may be in either physical therapy or recovery or those kind of things. It's like that's how it started. Then what happened was two things we found out. One is the people that bought that piece of equipment wanted. First of all, they loved the cloud sort of adaptive, component. But the other side of the equation was they wanted the rest of their equipment also wired up to this cloud. So not only did they want to prescribe exercises on this functional trainer, but they also wanted your leg press machine and your fly machine and your cardio, your bikes and those kind of things. And at about that time, we started working with the U.S. Air Force on performance training. So we had both this aspect of recovery and physical therapy, and then we had this aspect of performance training. So we ended up building a sensor platform that we could then take a sensor, and basically it's a LiDAR with a gyro and some accelerometer stuff, and we can put it on any piece of equipment in a gym and then count reps and understand velocity and those kind of things, right? And then that tied into our larger cloud platform. So now a physical therapist can not only prescribe activities on the functional trainer, but they could also then use the rest of the equipment and do cardio. So we wired up some bikes and some skiers and some rowers and those kind of things. So sort of that holistic sort of effort that someone might put in. About that same time that we were taking that out to market, we ended up doing a commercialization deal with Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And they were doing a lot of research around why girls, female athletes, girls, particularly teenagers, were having more ACL injuries than the boys of their same cohort. So why was this happening? Right? And they found out that when girls jump in the air, they land differently than boys do. Their knees go in, whereas boys' knees stay straight, and they were tearing their ACLs. And so then there was a series of follow-on research that says, well, how can we train girls to land correctly? And that's a very difficult thing to coach. And what came out of that from the neurosciences group is they realized that there's actually a third type of memory. When we talk about human memory, we talk about short-term memory and long-term memory. Well, there's actually another type of memory called procedural memory. And procedural memory is the memory that you use when you learn how to ride a bike.
Okay. So it's the repetitive actions that you do over and over again to try and make that you're storing as a memory.
Yeah, but it's really a very specific type of memory that you can describe to someone how to ride a bike, and they could read a book on how to ride a bike. But it is that most people who learn how to ride a bike, there's one instance where it just sort of clicks and they get it and they can do it. They couldn't do it 30 seconds before, but now they can do it, and they can now do that really for the rest of their lives. You may not ride a bike for 30 years, but as soon as you approach a bike, your brain kicks in and you sort of know how to do this again, right? So the goal there was to figure out how to train the girls to jump and land correctly using procedural memory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So what they did was they had a 40 mocap camera system, so motion capture, right, with the little balls that they put on that they use for movies. So they had 40 cameras around, and then they would record athletes jumping and landing and jumping and landing. They sort of did all the math around that, and then they would bring students in. They'd put HoloLenses on them. And then they would give them a sort of, think of it as a square that was sitting in their field of view and nothing else. And then they would go, okay, we want you to do these activities, and we're not going to tell you what's right and what's wrong, but we want you to not deform the square when you do this motion. And if you could do the motion without deforming the square, you're doing the motion correctly.
Wow.
And so that trained procedural memory. And then you can train someone to jump, you can train someone to do squats, you can train someone to do lunges, and really it's their cognitive capability to do procedural memory, where you're just telling them, are you doing it correctly, without telling them what to do or how to fix it.
How to make the square perfect. Yeah.
Exactly. Once they figure that out, they know that for the rest of their lives.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a great piece of technology and research. And then so what we did is we commercialized that, and we brought that out and said, okay, we've got this 900-pound functional trainer, we've got this sensor platform, and now we have the ability to take, and we sort of shrunk it down into sort of a LiDAR-based camera system, that I can point a LiDAR-based camera at you, and then I can guide you through, activities and workouts and we call them motions.
And in a way, gamifying it so that you can, like you said, keep the square stable and
so that way when you're doing, it's not, when you're doing squats, it's not just 1, 2, 3. It's actually, okay, I'm trying to do it correctly. I'm trying to manage that, right? Wow. So the pandemic hit, and we had just essentially got this into sort of a beta. So now we have a 900-pound functional trainer. We have an IoT sensor platform. Now we have this LiDAR-based camera system, and no one is going to gyms or clinics anymore.
Yeah.
And we don't know when they're going to go back to gyms or clinics anymore.
Yeah.
So our CEO is great at. We didn't pivot. We sort of fanned a little bit. We continued to do what we were doing, but what we really did was. We sort of tied into a bunch of machine learning models that were in existence and started to improve them. And so that way we can do exercise and movement tracking with just a webcam. Okay. So the same webcam we're using to talk right now, we can use that. We can watch you. We've got some machine models that can figure out where you are, knows where your joints are, and then we can know, hey, you're doing a squat, you're doing it correctly. Here, we can measure all of your joints while you're doing that. We can measure velocity, all those kind of things, and we can rep count. And we don't need any equipment anymore.
Yeah.
So you're really losing all the balls that you used to stick over yourself and the specialized cameras, and you've just gone back to a webcam and some AI sitting behind it. That's really good. Well done.
Yeah. Exactly. In fact, today is, I'll go May 18th. Yeah. It's the first day of Google I/O, and Google is announcing a brand new machine learning model called MoveNet that we helped them build with Google research over the last 8 months. So that's sort of at the core of our product. So Google research was working on these models. They were giving them to us. We were working on it with our physical therapists and our clinical staff, and then we would give them updates, and we had this sort of back and forth relationship, and all that's being announced today and tomorrow at Google I/O. So you're one of the first to hear about it.
You've heard it here. It's exclusive. So exclusive, you can nearly call it an exclusive.
There you go.
Do you think that, there's a lot of businesses out there that are purely profit-based, but this sounds a lot more like it's community and society-based. Do you think that there should be more outcomes that are from businesses that are just not just profit?
Yeah, we talk about there's two things that drive us from a technology perspective. The one is we really want to work on things that have an impact in people's lives, right? And that's one of the reasons why even in the past, I never did like I want to do an insurance system that transfers data from one insurance system to another. Not that that kind of work is bad for developers, but that's just not something that ever sort of went. I want to devote my life into that kind of work. So we really want to have some social or personal impact on people's lives in the work that we do. The other side of the equation is we want really to have a technical challenge, something that's very difficult to do. Other people haven't done it. We got to figure things out, and we have engineers, sort of work through and try to solve those problems.
There's a huge amount of satisfaction
between those
in
two
that,
things,
I think.
and those drive us. And the the mission and goal that we had when we first started with the functional trainer was to help someone with accessibility problems, and now it has turned into, look, we want to help people with fall prevention, knee and hip replacements, and just move, right? Because that's really one of our goals, is to get people to move and be able to live a healthier life.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So, between impact in people's lives, or some sort of societal impact, and then very challenging technical things, that I think should drive, at least from an engineering perspective, drive business. And we going from a functional trainer that is accessibility based to now, remote patient management and tracking, where I just need a webcam and we can help people live healthier lives. Because at the end of the day, we just want them to move.
Yeah.
And if you move, you're going to live a healthier life. And if we can facilitate that, that's really what our goal is.
That's great.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's really good to have that background in the culture of the business. I know right now that I've been consulting probably for 25 years or something ridiculous. And the consulting I'm doing at the moment is very attached to humans around the globe. And it means so much to me and the team. And I think the team has seen how I've changed. It's the best piece of work I've ever done. Saying that, how do you think all of the work that you're doing affects the culture of the business?
We are a believer in, and we use something called EOS. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's from a book called Traction, and it's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's the philosophy that every business has its own internal operating system. They may just not know it, and it's probably not efficient if they don't, right? So it goes beyond how do you invoice and how do you do marketing and how do you sales. It is how do you relate to each other and what is your culture. And part of that is to identify what are your core values as an organization. Not, we want to have stockholder share increases or any of those kind. It is, what is the type of person that if they worked at your organization, they will flourish. And then that also tells you what type of person would not work at your organization. And once you sort of can identify those core values, whether it's transparency or delivery or integrity or whatever your core values for your organization is, then what we do is we will rate and track people as part of your performance review against your core values. And we can tell if someone doesn't fit with inside the core value set, because they won't score high in certain areas. And then we do remediation, right? And if they're not the right person for the organization, it's okay. They can move on. But we hire with that core values in mind. We bring it up during interviews. We talk about them. We define them. It's very clear from what is driving us as an organization through our internal values, not necessarily what our company does for a living and who we're selling to, but if you're in this, these are the type of people that are here working on it. If you're not like that, it's best for you not to be here. And that's sort of how we drive culture from the beginning, from the hiring process.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because some people are in the hiring realm of, let's just get as many people as we can and throw people at the problem rather than the right people at the problem.
Yeah, and that it requires some discipline in order to be able to do that. But at the same time, we know that the people that we are counting on a day in and day out basis that we're working with, right? That and we're remote, and as some of us go back to office, and as we build these systems, we all share a common core value system, and then that means we all are looking at our patients or our customers' patients in sort of the same light, that we're here to make their life better. Why are we not being able to do that in whatever particular instance that's going on, and how can we fix that?
It's really working on the softer side of the of a CV when you've got somebody coming in, isn't it?
Yes. There's the concept of, is it the right person for the organization, and then are they in the right seat? Because we may have a right person for the organization, they're just not doing the right job. So how can we want to keep them in the organization because they're good for the organization. How can we move them around and find the right place for them to benefit inside the organization
and to thrive?
But if you get the right person in the right seat, they are in tune with the mission and what we're trying to accomplish, and sort of them as we go forward and we get larger. What are we trying to do on sort of a grand scale?
Are you working remotely at the moment? Have you always been working remotely? What's your standard?
Yeah, no. When last, what was it, May 12th or March 12th, right? When all that happened, we were in the office, and we decided that it was a Thursday, and we were going to try working from home on that Friday, and we never went back.
Okay.
and now I live 20 miles from the office.
Okay.
I have been in the office to pick things up 3 times in a year.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Now our CEO goes to the office every day, and so when he's on Zoom, we're having conversations about, and I know where he's at, and I know where my desk is in relationship to where he is, but we have not been there, and we've been very effective in remote, and that also allowed us to expand. We have employees in California, we've got employees in New Jersey. So now we've decided, because we used to have a mentality of, hey, I need to hire local, I need to recruit local because they need to show up in the office, here's their desk, that kind of thing. This whole process told us that we could really work with anyone, anywhere, if they're the right person. They're a good cultural fit, and they're a good seat fit, and they believe in what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
but we don't care where they live.
Yeah.
What about you, Michael? Are you working remotely now still?
I've been working remotely since about the same time. I'd still go into visit clients, not so much late last year, but it's been a lot more lately. But we've been working remotely for 7 or 8 years, so it's not a huge issue for us.
Yeah. How about you?
I think I'm going to see clients probably 2 or 3 days a week, because there are still some clients who are having difficulties working remotely, especially in a secure ambience when they're very in secure areas. So I still go out and visit them for 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah, and you're flying as well, aren't you now, David?
Yeah, I've actually just started flying again. So about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, I'm now actually flying in and out.
So,
yeah, our customer service team and our chief clinical officer are out in California. But yes, they were here in the Midwest, and they had to go up to Michigan and Kentucky and Pennsylvania. And so they were doing a tour last week as we were releasing to new clients. So they're out traveling. But I used to think I was inefficient working from home. And it turns out I'm more efficient once I was able to create a space, and I wasn't working at a living room table or something. It's like, nope, this is what's happening now.
You need to set up that mindset, and it's something that Michael and I spoke about April last year, about people working from home having a mindset that this is my work office, this is my desk office, and that's where I'm going to work from. But I'll also say I've had my AstraZeneca jab, and I've had no repercussions from it, nothing at all.
Yeah, I finished the 2 doses of Moderna, so
well done.
I'm now free to move about the country, apparently. So there you go.
Scary, isn't it?
I'm just trying to get to.
So I'm kind of not. I don't think I'll get mine maybe not even this year yet. We'll find out.
Just from an availability, or from a
availability, like it's really slow to roll out. And I'm not in any of the high risk or high, rollout age groups or ethnicities or anything like that. So
Yeah, go on, say it. I'm an old person and I'm high risk and
That's
I
what I was
travel.
thinking.
Go on. Yeah, Michael was thinking it too.
Yeah. Chris, you seem to be someone who really loves learning, and you've sort of spoken about that already. But for me, I've always thought if I stop learning, I kind of stop living, and I'm not really happy when I'm not learning. Is that what it's like for you? How do you treat learning?
Yeah, it's like breathing. That I don't even think about it anymore. It's what I do. I don't, I know some people go, wow, I set time aside to go read and I set time aside to do this. It's like, no, it just happens. It's just what
Just
happens.
works, yeah.
And the acquisition of knowledge, there for a long time. So I've been also in consulting for about 30 years, and everything changes every 4 months, really. What you knew 4 months ago as far as development and especially machine learning and IoT and all those kind of things. There's just this constant cycle that's
Yep.
going on, and you have to stay on top of it in order to understand what sort of insights and new positioning you can get in order to take advantage of that. And after doing it for so long, I don't know how I would not do that. And my wife sort of rolls her eyes. I'm on YouTube watching videos on the mathematics behind tensors just because I want to sort of like catch up on it. And she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "This is fascinating, right?" And sort of seeing how people will do renderings and graphics and infographics to explain sort of complex things. It's like I'm not. I already sort of understand what's going on, from the math perspective, but I want to see how they approach telling somebody about it,
Yeah.
because that's also an important key to the kinds of work that we do.
It is really tough to explain machine learning to non-machine learning people or non-technical people, isn't it?
Actually, even technical people have a lot of trouble understanding what machine learning is unless they've actually gone down that path.
I think there was a pivotal. I don't know if we want to plug anybody, but there was a pivotal video that there's a guy on YouTube. He does a YouTube channel called Coding Train.
Yep.
And he is a guy out of New York University, I believe. And he does these great videos, very animated. Like it's almost like watching a children's program, right? But these are complex sort of kind of things he's doing. But it is just such enthralling. And he did. This is about 3 years ago. He did a video where the first 10 minutes of this video, he sort of set up what is machine learning and why would you even care about it? And in that 10 minutes of that video was pivotal. It was almost like the circle being drawn on the screen of that.
Yeah, the feeling of getting
device,
getting that new that circle up with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was like I totally get why we would use this now, and he was going into, hey, we probably don't need to build this convolutional neural network to do this simple thing, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to tell you why. And really, he just laid out perfectly what machine learning is and why you're going to want to know about it and how you're going to use it. And I've found that I apply ML much more than my peer group, only because it gives me a lot of advantage to some of the things that we're working on. Like, we were talking today. If we're doing body tracking, one of the things I need to know is if someone is standing or if they're sitting or if they're lying down or if they're what's called long sitting, which is sort of like you're on the ground, but your legs are extended. So you're not really sitting, but you're not laying. And then side lying. And what is that? And these are all clinical sort of things. And you have two choices there, right? I've got this cloud of data that goes, I know where your left shoulder is, I know where your right shoulder is, I know where your elbow is, I know where your nose is, and I can do geometry or trigonometry to then go, oh, is this person sitting down? I don't know. Let's go measure their knee, and then let's go measure their hip, and then let's go determine if their head is above their hip. Is there lateral lean in their trunk, and and you could sort of do all these sort of mathematics. Or I could just take a bunch of imagery of people sitting down, go grab the data points of those images, and then cluster those. And then I can look at any person sitting down and go, is that person sitting down? And, yep, there's a 92% chance that that person is sitting down.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's a high enough confidence threshold. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
And, we say all the time, in fact, I had it on my whiteboard, you cannot if then else your way into a self-driving car. Right? There's just no other way to do it, right?
Now you're on to one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot write enough code to do something like that.
Yeah, the if then else clauses would become far too nested.
Yes, yeah.
So you've done a lot of consulting in the past. Have you heard some really crazy pitches that have been either given to you or that you have given?
No, my favorite, and I use this a lot when because we work with very early stage startups, and in fact, Include Health was a very early stage startup. It was one guy who had this, won a bunch of awards for this design and wanted to turn it into a real company, right? And but my favorite one was. They approached us and they submitted a proposal and basically they wanted to take a phone and then they wanted to use the front the screen as a charger.
Okay.
Just let that sink in for a second. And so I was like, okay, so you're doing some kind of polymer on the screen or some kind of, and it just came down to the fundamental misunderstanding. Well, no, it's like a solar panel. It's a black screen. It should absorb energy. I want to write some software to take the energy that it's absorbing and put it into the battery. And I'm like,
doesn't
I just it was just an unapproachable conversation at that point, right? Because you don't want to go. There's some laws of like thermodynamics and loss of energy over transfer, and you're not going to get there, right? And beyond the fact that if that was possible, Apple would have already done that.
Maybe you should just suggest that after they've developed perpetual motion, we can maybe look at
exactly.
That one. or use the heat. You'll use the heat of your hand on the back of the phone. There we go.
Oh, there! See, you've solved the world energy crisis. No one will ever need to charge their phone again.
That's right.
No. So, but I thought I was just missing something.
No.
Right when this conversation was going on, it was just one of those. I must not understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then it turns out, no, I understood what he was saying. It was just not possible.
I can just imagine you thinking, okay, so they're thinking about putting a solar panel behind the screen. Is that what you're thinking? Yeah. So it goes through the screen and catches it.
Yeah, and I thought it was like a resin or, how is it applied to the screen? And he was just like, no, the screen that's there right now is black. Yeah. So it should act as a solar panel. And I was like, yeah, right. I was like, there's no software I can write to do that energy conversion, right?
And I have enough problem with my phone heating up as it is.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go.
Very true.
So that's my fun story from
That's pretty cool. I like
unsolicited pitch.
Yes, yeah.
And you've been doing some work in the mentoring space as well with Dev Launch, is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
And
we decided. We decided a while ago that not that colleges aren't good. You go to CS degree, your master's, that kind of thing. But there was a populace that are more than capable of being software developers, but they missed that opportunity for one reason or another, and it would just be out of a connection, right? They just weren't going to get there. So what we did was we started a program at the Metropolitan Library to teach sort of learn to code classes.
Yeah.
And then what we would do is we would teach these learn to code classes, and it was some simple JavaScript and HTML and CSS, simple kind of things. And we brought little Raspberry Pis, so we'd plug the little Raspberry Pis into the monitors at the thing, and then they got to keep the Raspberry Pi. We'd give it to them after if they completed the course.
How cool is
that? But then what we really were doing, where we were looking for the opportunity to hire to sort of staff up an apprenticeship. So if someone showed a lot of talent, a lot of desire, a lot of sort of like, oh, I'm really into this, I love this, we would give them a paid apprenticeship.
Okay.
And then half of it was schooling, so we would teach them, and then half of it was working on projects with our regular development staff, sort of like an internship. And that was about a 4-month program that we would put them through, and then if they did really well, then we'd hire them as a software developer.
Nice.
And that program, in fact, one of our directors came through that program.
Wow.
And yeah, it's very successful. There's a couple of then we sponsored something called Icy Stars, which started in Chicago. We moved it to Columbus, a branch of it to Columbus, and that was not just programmers, but also other technical resources like BAs, QAs, project managers. And then that also taught life skills like how do you do a checkbook? How do you get a bank account? How do you, so it was aimed at people. And I think the average income of the person going into Icy Stars was about $9,000 a year.
Yeah.
Once they completed that program, it moved up to $50,000 a year.
Wow. That's
so
huge.
It's those kinds of impacts that we want to look for.
Yeah, that's a huge societal impact as well, because it's, it's giving opportunities to people who wouldn't otherwise have them as well.
Yeah, it would have been very easy at some point for me to just sort of miss university and get sidetracked, and I have no idea. I know some of my friends, that not that being a manager at a large box store is a bad thing, but there's more that you could do, and if we can find people that should have been able to get there and just missed it for some reason, but they have a desire to be there, well, let's help them out.
Yeah,
sure.
Definitely.
Do you have a favorite piece of technology?
Yeah.
You talk about so many different pieces of technology, and you spoke about the Internet of Things. Is there something around you right now that you could say, this is my favorite piece of technology? Is it a door opener? Is it a heater? Is it a camera? A self-driving car?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty difficult thing, because again, I think it almost goes back to that learning thing that once you explore sort of the recesses of something, you go on to the next thing, and it is a perpetual unhappiness with my current state of technology that I just continue to drive to the next thing, right? As far as just the generic technology around me, I will say, and to the chagrin of probably many, is I have predominantly just surrounded myself with Apple products. I write code on them, iPhones, the watches, our software is written on the iPads, that kind of thing. So what I appreciate about that is the seamless connectivity between all of them. I've got multiple laptops, multiple iPads, iPhones, ear, kind of things, and it just sort of anticipates what I want to do next. And I think that kind of attention to detail are things that I aspire to.
Yeah, I love being able to copy a link from my phone and paste it onto my computer. That thing that just makes me so happy when I can do that.
That and I answer most of my texts on my laptop. And people are like, how are you typing so fast? It's like, because I'm on my laptop and I'm just typing to you, right? And it's like, all right, there you go. But obviously, I in the background, I've got the Oculuses, I've got all of those. I love VR, HoloLens. I still have all of our LiDAR cameras. Those are a lot of fun to play with, to do 3D modeling. And I've got my 3D printer. And there's really nothing I don't have that, from an access perspective, it's just one of those. Is there one thing? No, they're all
great.
All my children.
We have 3 questions that we ask everyone just to keep things standard and make sure that we can, have some consistency, because we're not really consistent with this podcast. Would you do anything differently based on that, if you had a chance?
I would not. I liked everything that I've done in the different phases of my career. From very large companies to the people and the technologies and in the industries, and I'm very happy where I am right now. So had I changed anything in the past, I might not be here. Working with Include Health on some of the things that we're doing, and the partnership and relationship we have with Google, and some of the large systems, and having the opportunity, just being on the cusp of having the opportunity to help millions of lives live better. I probably wouldn't change anything, because it would sort of in the paradox of timelines, it would mess up my timeline.
I mean, time travel. Next. I love that that meme that I see every day. It's like, what do we want? Time travel. When do we want it? It's irrelevant.
Exactly.
So if you weren't doing what you were doing now, what would you be doing?
And I asked myself this question a little bit differently. It was if I had lived 100 years ago or 150 years ago, what would I do?
Oh, that's a nice way of thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that way it takes out the, I would just be doing some other kind of.
Yeah.
I would think I would either be, well, I could hope, right? What would I actually be doing? Well, I don't know. About 150 years ago, my ancestors were in Ireland farming potatoes, so I would probably be doing that. But what I would prefer to be doing, either in a university setting or in some sort of either like the marketplace, or if you went back far enough, it'd be like, if you some of the large international travel or shipping corporations that existed back in the day. Any of those would be quite interesting to live through.
150 years
many
ago.
people have spoken when we asked that question. I'd be traveling. I think that will change now quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. There's not much traveling happening. But my ancestry was in shipping.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So I find that fascinating. That changed the world. Being, when product getting moved as soon, especially over the ocean, right? And then into, the Pac Rim and Australia, and that entire connectivity changed the world. And of course airplanes did too, but that was really that first wave of
being able to send stuff internationally and send people internationally. Yeah.
And sort of understand the scope of humanity in that kind of basis, that all that existed. Yeah.
You're probably really well placed to answer this question, but do you have any predictions for the future of technology?
Yeah, I think technology is a tool, and from the continuum of fire through stone tools, flint, iron, and artificial intelligence is just another tool in our roadmap. I don't think it. Now we go through paradigm shifts. We don't really have buggy makers and hay farmers as much as we did in the past, right? So the societal shifts on how people work and what they do are there. But have we seemed to be making progress using technology throughout sort of that span of time? I think we have. I think that machine learning and artificial intelligence is really that next cusp, because it allows us to solve problems that we really couldn't solve before, because we just didn't have the scope of knowledge to see patterns in the vast amounts of connected data. Right? We could see glimmers of it. We could look at manifests and those kind of things and sort of understand the stories behind the data, but we never really saw the pattern of what really was going on. So I think that's really going to be one of our next things that we're going to be able to see is looking at ourselves and our society sort of in a macrocosm and see, oh, this is how this thing actually works versus what we see on a day-to-day basis in sort of our micro lens.
It's interesting you saying that and listening to some of the companies that are now bringing in 300,000-400,000 streams of social media from around the globe, and how they can predict and see things that are happening long before news releases and long before anything is actually being seen. So it's really understanding that whole continuum of data is amazing.
Yeah, and it gives us the ability. Well, first of all, it gives us the ability to connect to everybody. at least from that social media kind of thing. But the volumes of data that we can now acquire and then make an understanding of. I mean, even the work that I'm doing right now, yes, we paint 16 dots on a person, frame after frame after frame, 60 frames a second. Well, that means I've got 16 times 60 data points as to where in time was this joint on a single human. Then go, okay, well, we've got, tens of thousands of patients using the system to do these activities. We know what their diagnoses are. We know what their clinical predictions are. We know what they're trying to accomplish. We can then step back and apply machine learning to that across the spectrum and go, you know what, if you have a knee replacement, this is your best recovery option. And we know that because we've looked at tens of thousands of people doing knee recovery and the things that they did, and we found the pattern.
Yeah.
And I think that's just going to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris, I could talk to you about AI and all of this for another couple of hours. I think Michael might start getting upset with me if I keep going on.
There is one thing I wanted to ask about, and that's I think I was reading through your profile, and you mentioned whiskey, which is one of my interests.
Oh yes, yeah.
What's your American whiskey, or I've had a I guess a lot of Japanese whiskeys and been to a few distilleries over in Japan.
So I have not gotten into Japanese whiskey, although I've heard that it's much better than the other thing. I'm sort of weird, just like technology. I go through these cycles, and so people that know me are like, I will go through a deep learning cycle of Scotch.
Yep.
And what's Highland, what's Lowland, those kind of, and then I'll get into the different Irish whiskeys, and then I'll get into American bourbons, and so I've gone through all of these sort of gyrations, and then I went through a time period, and I still do this as a hobby where I make my own bitters for like craft cocktails.
Wow.
And so because it's the salt of cocktails, right?
Yeah.
And but I find at the end of the day, when I'm going to have a nightcap, it really boils down to one of two things. It's either some rye whiskey or some Jameson.
Oh yeah, Jameson's is always a good.
Yeah.
Jameson's
those are my go-to, and some bullet rye, and make an old fashioned out of that, or just some Jameson straight.
Yeah, wow.
And, that's where I land.
Michael, what's your favorite?
That'll change in a month. That's how I am.
Well, yeah, I went to, because I bought, every time I go to Japan, I come back with some new whiskies and stuff. And I've got a couple
I
in the
need to
cupboard
come round to your place.
Yeah. Well, last time I went to the bottle store here, they were up to $580. So I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to afford that here. I might have to wait till I go back to Japan or start flying again. So, and even in duty free the other day, coming back through there, it was really expensive. So I think I'm going to have to try exploring new, local ones. Just try and find
fortunately,
one.
I'm about an hour north of Kentucky.
In that case, we need to come to you.
Yeah. We go down and you can do the distillery tours, and then there's quite a lot of small batch kind of things going on in northern and central Kentucky that you can pick up, and they're great.
Yeah, a small batch smoky whiskey. Now we're talking.
Yeah,
I like smoky ones. Chris, it's been absolutely awesome talking to you. Thank you very much for spending some time with us. I am sure we will do this again fairly soon.
Yep. I had a lot of fun. It was really great talking to both of you.
Yeah, thank you. I really, really, really enjoyed it. Learned a lot, and I think that's one thing we're going to have to keep on top of.
The whiskies.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, Chris.
What's that? Do you continue saving your password in an Excel spreadsheet? Well, my friend, either your habits need to be changed or you are going to be exposed to a cyber attack very soon. At TeamScale, we have decades of experience assisting our customers in securing their business and optimizing their process, making them more competitive in the market. Be bold, be smarter, be faster with TeamScale. Visit teamscale.com to learn more.